All right, the transfer portal is finally coming to a close, although they can still sign people out of it. This has been one of the most active years for Ohio State. Now, and it's relatively new, but, I think the big thing we have to keep in mind, and I know that a lot of people were worried because Ohio State had, 30-some folks in the transfer portal. They have now, as we tape this, they've got 16 that are coming in. They had to make room for them. And this is the world we live in. Getting older is the world we live in. And I think Ryan Day and the coaches had that revelation. As you look at the world of college football, I've been predicting this is going to happen for a while, that these other conferences will be farm teams and whatever. But this is just the nature of the beast of doing business now in college football. At least that's what's working now. And you look at the two teams that are going to play for the national championship on Monday. Both of them, by the way, beat Ohio State. But both of them are also very old with old quarterbacks. Ohio State won the national title a year ago with a mature quarterback.
I think if you look at that Miami defensive line, I think it's a good staple as to what the future of college football looks like. Those are two veteran guys that have really been game changers and the reason this team is where it is. You talk about age. I look at the guy they just signed out of LSU, the wide receiver. He's in the same recruiting class as Carnell Tate. So he comes into this program as a very veteran guy. A lot of these guys down the line are in the same recruiting class as Arch Manning. When you think about veteranness, that's big when it comes to Ohio State. But more so, I think this whole portal cycle was about patience for the Buckeyes. It was about waiting for everything to play out, seeing who was leaving, where those gaps were needed, while also keeping up with everything. We heard from Ross Bjork earlier in the week. Ohio State was always going to be the most competitive in what they wanted, and that showed there at the end of the cycle. First of all, you say these young teams or these smaller teams. I don't think any of us imagined that Alabama would just become a pipeline for Ohio State, but that's where we are at this point. And you look at, getting the duo on the defensive line from Alabama has been huge for the Buckeyes. James Smith is projected to be one of the best players in the whole portal. So a week ago, it looked like the sky was falling. I think everybody can put those pieces back. I think it's okay. The sky did not fall. Ryan Day did, in fact, know what he was doing. And with it, I think Ohio State has built a very similar roster feel to 2024. Dom, you talk about the veterans. That's what made 2024 so great, is that Caleb Downs was here. Quinshon Judkins was a veteran. All the guys that they got in the portal were veteran guys. They have that yet again, and I think it's got to give some solace to Buckeye fans. And,
Nicole, the thing is, as you look at the method to this madness, this is relatively uncharted waters. And, we talk about the transfer portal and all this stuff. All of this stuff is just a few years old, and they're still figuring it out. Who knows? In 2 more years, it might be something different. But, the bottom line is they had a bunch of guys go into the transfer portal. You hate to see these guys leave. You hate to see it didn't work out. But I really believe, and I want your opinion, the day of the 5-star athlete sitting and waiting his turn, I don't think that's going to happen because they all want to get paid.
They do. They all want to get paid, but also I agree with you. Those days are completely over. And you say, a lot of Buckeyes entered the portal. That's going to happen every year. This is going to continue to happen for as long as this world really exists in the way that it does now. But, Adam, you brought up a good point, and it is about the veteran guys, the guys who have played a lot of football. I look at a guy like Jacoby Jackson from Florida. He's in his 7th year. You look at every...
A lot of people go to college for 7 years.
I was about to say, who else went to college for 7 years?
That's a Tommy Boy line.
The guy that's the quarterback
Carson Beck,
he was at your school and won 2 national titles.
I was about to say, and what do they do? Win 2 national titles. You look at a Will Howard, like you said. What did he do? He won a national title. I now look at every position group on this roster, and you pinpoint one guy and say, there's the vet. There's the vet. You've got Kenyatta Jackson obviously coming back. Jacoby Jackson coming back in the running back room. That with Bo Jackson, watch out, folks. Obviously, the offensive line, a lot of those guys coming back. Every room now has that presence, and that is key in the world of college football. So, like Adam said, shout out to Bama. Nick Saban, thanks a lot for opening up the pipeline. But you look at it, you've got guys from Florida, Alabama, Georgia, LSU. Buckeye fans, that's what you wanted, and that's what you're getting.
And the other thing, Adam, is I look at what we're seeing, and I know Ryan Day as well as anyone, and he cares so much about his players, but he's also very honest. And I guarantee you they had some hard talks with these guys. They had some tough discussions, and, 30-some guys going, and there's only so much money to go around. There's only so much love to go around.
I don't think you're ever going to see a number like this go into the portal for Ohio State. Because
You
I
say
think
that now.
No, well, I think what this offseason was kind of the cleansing of the roster, if you will. It was the first true initiation of all of the 5 stars saying, if I'm not going to play right now, I'm going to go. And I think Ohio State, maybe next year will be the same because they did take in a lot of freshmen in the roster when it comes to recruiting. They got 28 guys, which is by far the most Ryan Day has had in a class. And so it may look different next year, but in the future, you're going to see these recruiting classes drop down to about 15 guys. And instead of it being quantity, it's going to be 15 guys that they circle and say, these are the guys that we genuinely believe, maybe not their freshman year, but by their sophomore year, they will be full-time starters. And they're going to have to play a role as a freshman because depth is not a thing anymore in modern college football. It's much like the NFL, although I give Ohio State credit. When you look at where they went in the portal, they feel good on the offensive line. The wide receiver room, they lost Quincy Porter and Mylon Graham. What did they do? They went out, got a great receiver from UTSA, added an LSU receiver, and now you look at those are depth pieces. When you look at the tight end room, there's an argument to be made that it might be the most underrated tight end in the country right now is coming to Ohio State and Welsing. So when you look at that, there are so many different pieces that they just kind of plugged the holes that they needed to fill. They added a lot of depth on that defensive line, get a lot of rotation next year, and they might not be done there. Remember, the portal is closing, but there are still a lot of guys out there, especially on the edge, that the Buckeyes could try to go get one more piece.
Also, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, when you look at that secondary especially, talk about depth, yeah, you lose a guy in Caleb Downs. Obviously, that is the name everybody's talking about losing. But like you said, Adam, you bring in a guy like Earl Little Jr., Dominic Kelly from Georgia, who was the backup, but trust me, Georgia fans wanted to keep him. He has a lot of potential. Then you obviously have Jermaine Matthews coming back, Devin Sanchez. Depth is huge, and that was the concern heading into this point of the year with the transfer portal and all that movement. But now I feel like, I don't know, I guess a question for you guys, is there a concern? Which position group are you still somewhat maybe concerned about after this time period?
Well, I mean, if you look at what's winning now, it's old quarterbacks.
Right.
Now, Julian Sayan's going to be an older quarterback next year.
That's your concern.
He will have 1 year under his belt. And, I think we can agree that the most important player on the field is the quarterback. And I think they're going to have to take a hard look at some things with Julian as far as, should he have maybe run some down the stretch? I think, that debate will win. And I think they're having hard conversations and hard look. I think deep down they probably didn't want him to run. But, I remember when CJ was here, they didn't really want him to run. And then we saw him in that Georgia game. And guess what? He ran. And now I watch him on Sundays. And guess what? CJ runs. Again, the game is evolving. The one thing about football is what's old is new again, and it's in life and it's in our business. What is old is new again. There are no new ideas. Everything just gets reinvented and redone. But I do think a running quarterback is something they're going to need, especially when I look at the schedule that they're going to play next year. And so if someone would ask me right now, did they better themselves going into next season? Is this team? We won't know until they start playing. We won't know until how they mesh. This is a whole new era. Now, Indiana's done a great job of bringing in these unrestricted free agents where every year it's unrestricted. Signetti, give him credit. He's done well. We got to see how Ryan Day and the Buckeyes will handle this, bringing in 16, 17, maybe 18, 20 players every year. But that's the world we're heading in college football until they get some kind of dadgum rules, which they need. Because this is not sustainable.
No.
And this is insane that every year you're going to turn it over. We already have one pro league. Did we really need another one?
No.
I think you're spot on. I don't think it'll look like this fast forward 3 years. I think there'll be some stability. I think we'll have contracts. I mean, Ross Bjork even said the word employees, which took me back when he said it. But I think that's where you have to head at this point. My favorite question of that is, do you think that they got better in the portal, and I think they did, Dom. I think if you're going to,
We think.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if you look at take it position by position. Let's start. You lose Caleb Downs, obviously that's a big hit. But then you bring in Earl Little, you bring in Terry Moore out of Duke. Those are two experienced guys that come in to play along McLean. So I feel good about the safety group there. When you look at quarterback, you bring Jermaine Matthews back, and you bring a guy that played cornerback with him at Winton Woods and Cam Calhoun out of Alabama. I love that. That's not to mention the depth they also brought in from Georgia. Then you go to that defensive line. You brought back Kenyatta Jackson to be your edge rusher. Maybe you go out and get one more piece there. But then you've got a guy out of UCF that's going to play D tackle. You've got James Smith from Alabama, who's the best defensive tackle in the entire transfer portal. You pair that with Edric Houston, who's got to take that next step. I feel great when it comes to defensive tackle. Linebacker, one of the most underrated guys that I think we're talking about in this cycle is Allegro from Wisconsin. We saw him play Ohio State, dominate. He had a broken hand.
Yeah.
It reminds me of who was Tommy. His name's
Eichenberg.
Eichenberg played with a broken hand. I mean, those are the guys that are going to come in and be the veterans that you need.
Yeah.
And then on offense, a lot of people wanted them to go get counterbalance to Bo Jackson. I understand, Jackson out of Florida is great. Don't forget about Isaiah West. Isaiah West is going to be a key contributor on this offense. So I do think they got better, and I think the roster may be in most positions better than last season.
And Nicole, to me, the biggest thing, though, and it's the 10,000-pound elephant in the room, the O-line.
Right.
And I think it is huge, Nicole, that they're bringing back the guys they're bringing back because they're going to be a year older, a year better, and a year hungrier because this O-line kind of did not stick the landing down the stretch. They're going to have to cherry pick and hopefully, get some guys to step up. But to me, the whole offense hinges. Now, I mentioned the quarterback running and all that, but this all will hinge on the O-line. And they got a tough schedule next year, but the O-line, which was and I don't know what happened. I loved the O-line. I studied them all year long, and the nastiness they had, and we saw that. Yeah, I played. I looked at the way. I was the center, the smartest guy on the team. But I loved the nastiness they had, and whatever edge they had in that Michigan game, I don't know if it was injuries, I don't know if it was fatigue, I don't know what it was. They didn't have it the last two.
I mean, what happened was they faced two of the best defensive fronts they've ever faced all year. That's what happened. They had not faced that kind of talent at all. And I agree with you. We had been hyping up the O-line all season because Julian Sain's jersey was clean pretty much every game. He was never sacked, but that's what happens when you face a good defensive front. You get tested. But I do agree with you, Dom, that they are bringing back Carson Hinsman, Austin Servo, Luke Montgomery, a guy who I think really blossomed this year.
And he's hungry.
And he's very hungry. I love his attitude. I love his energy. All of those guys have that dog mentality of wanting to prove themselves, and there's a reason why, especially a guy like Austin Servo said, I'm going to come back. I want to finish business. He wants to up his draft stock. They have a lot to prove because, listen, they did not end the year well. Not to be point blank, but that O-line did not look good to end the season. They have a lot to prove.
I think, Dom, it goes back to why they won the national championship in 2024, and it's almost the opposite. They won the national championship in 2024 because they got thrown a crazy predicament in offensive line.
Injuries.
And whether it be duct tape. I mean, Buckeye fans were weird about Justin Fry. They weren't necessarily very confident in Justin Fry. Justin Fry was a great offensive line coach. He put duct tape where it needed to go and made it work all the way to a national championship. Last year, I think Ohio State would admit that they did not solve their problems at offensive line until the second half of that Miami game. If you give them one more half of football, maybe they get where they need to go. But putting Ian Moore in, they tried to give Gabe Van Sickle his chance. It didn't work out in the way they thought. Tegra Chabola is not on this team anymore because there were many that thought that he was a weak link this past season. So I do think they got better at offensive line. It's interesting to me, they didn't spend at offensive line. They feel very confident the guys that they have in the room. And one thing, and
you get them coming back. They've been in the system.
That's huge.
To me, playing on the offensive line is the hardest thing to do in football. And the fact that you've got veterans now coming back that understand this offense, to me, that's huge. And they're going to be now you got to keep them healthy. You got to keep them healthy. That is huge. The other thing to me is we've got to get a running game that is consistent. Bo Jackson burst onto the scene. We thought he was, but they got to take it to another level. I look at I look at the 1-2 punch they had the year before with Trey, and I look at what Quinshon was able to do. They complemented each other. I didn't really see that this year, and they need that. You know, I look at the great ones like Eddie George. I look at what Zeke Elliott was able to do. They need that home run hitter back there.
You need that because you just named it. I mean, I look at a team with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb at Georgia, the dynamic running back duo. And I will say, this past season, it was slightly unfair for all of us to say, well, Trey Henderson and Quinshon Judkins were just here. I mean, that was an incredibly dynamic running back duo. But, Adam, you brought up the fact that, they've got Bo Jackson, an incredible freshman who put up numbers. I think it is key to have this veteran guy in Jacoby Jackson in this running back room because it just brings the veteran mindset. And I think that's huge in the run game because at the end of the day, Bo Jackson's young. Isaiah West is
He's
young.
just a kid. I mean, you realize that when you talk to him.
Exactly.
He's got a baby face.
Yeah. So I think it's key. I know there's a lot of talk that everybody wanted Frazier from Georgia, but it's key to have that veteran mindset, and I do agree with you, Dom, that I liked how they used C.J. Donaldson last year, where when they were in the red zone, I call him the red zone reliable running back. Bo Jackson obviously putting up the numbers. I'm not worried about that production. I'm worried about the consistency because I think that was a huge question mark. But I do think bringing in a guy, he had 7 touchdowns in 2024. He was injured part of the season last year at Florida. So I'm curious how he fits into the puzzle.
I think it's interesting, and I think if you peeled back the curtain a little bit, there would be some people inside the Woody that would tell you that Bo Jackson probably should have played earlier. He should have been given more reps. I mean, we didn't really get to see the Bo Jackson show almost until the very end of the season once they got to Michigan and said, all right, let's let this be his backfield and let's let Isaiah West be his kind of second hand. Go back to the Texas game. The 2 running backs were James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson. So I hope that with this running back room, I understand a lot of people are excited about Jackson. They wanted Nate Frazier out of Georgia. They didn't get him. That's fine because I think you have to lean on the fact that Bo Jackson is a sophomore. Trey Henderson in his freshman year did not necessarily always live up to the hype of what people thought. J.K. Dobbins had a freshman year where people said, who's this guy? We got to keep an eye on. Zeke in his freshman year was not anything, what's that saying you always say?
But those days, but the game was different then.
There's a saying you say from Coop. What is it about? Something a pup?
Oh, yeah,
if a dog bites, he bites as a pup.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you saw it a little bit from Bo Jackson, but give him another year, 2 more years, and I think he could develop into what you want in a Buckeye running back that becomes legendary.
And I agree, but that was the old college football motto. The new college football motto is we don't wait on anyone. Let's go. We got to go. We got to go. And I think that, I think that might change the mentality of the offensive coaches. I think that might change the mentality of what Coach Day does. And you're right. If a dog bites, he bites as a pup. And you're probably right. They probably should have thrown him to the wolves in the beginning. I mean, you try to protect them, but it's a different game. And, freshmen have always played, but they're going to have to play even a bigger role in the modern age of where age and experience is the most important thing, I think, in the game. And I think Bo can be a great running back, but they need that home run hitter. I mean, that's what.
But I think he can be that.
And I think he can too, but that's what they got. That was, to me, the one thing that was missing, that home run in the running game. And then we didn't see really the consistency you needed in that loss to Indiana and to the loss to Miami.
The other thing I don't want to get lost in all of this is we talk so much about the transfers. We got a list now. I think it's 800 people long. There are a lot of talented guys on this team that are going to take the next step, much like Bo Jackson. When you look at Riley Pettijohn in the linebacker room, it's going to be a major factor. Devin Sanchez is coming back in his second year. A guy like Zion Grady, he isn't getting much talk right now, but he got a lot of reps. He played in that Miami game. So while we focus on the guys that left and filling those holes, there are a lot of up-and-comers that did stick around that are going to be those 5 stars that a year from now we're talking about. Thank goodness they stuck around.
And the other thing that's weird that we've got to keep in mind, and sometimes it's hard, and I think that's why the Nick Sabans and the Urban Meyers and those type guys got out of the game because, these players have agents and they're dealing and they're taking the advice. These are still kids, but they've got, adults representing them. And, sometimes they have inflated value and whatever. At the end of the day, Ryan Day and the coaches have to go with who they think is going to give them the best chance to win, because no one wants to win more than Ryan Day and the coaches. I mean, that's their livelihood. And if if you miss the playoff, that's not a good thing in Columbus, Ohio now.
If they miss the playoff, sound the alarm. Boy.
They will not miss. They're not missing.
I'm just saying, but
But no,
hey, ask Penn State if they could miss the playoff.
Well,
this
that's
team was
true.
picked number 2 in the country.
I mean, you bring it up though, Dom, and we've talked about this, but when you really put it into perspective, these are 18 and 19-year-old dudes dealing with millions of dollars.
Sure.
They don't know what to do with. I don't know what to do with millions of dollars. I don't have that, but it's crazy to put it in perspective when they are leaning on their agents to kind of steer them and negotiate. And should I hop into the portal because maybe I'm going to get more money somewhere else? But put it in perspective, y'all. These are 18-year-old kids dealing with millions.
Last thing I want to ask you guys. I look at the schedule, and we thought Texas was going to be, and the schedule's what the schedule is, and then we thought Penn State was going to be, and the schedule's what it is. I look at next year's schedule, and it is full of booby traps, and to me, it is a tough schedule. If they go through that thing undefeated, my goodness.
Not just tough, I think it is the toughest in college football, truly.
Don't tell the SEC that.
No, I'm just saying, I think it is.
So they have to go, what, to Texas,
Yep.
to Oregon,
To Indiana.
to Indiana. They don't
To
go to
USC.
Do they go to USC
They
next
go to
season? They go to
USC.
USC.
Iowa.
So those four, yeah,
But
okay.
I'm
And then
missing
Michigan has to
everyone,
come
but
here.
Michigan is here.
So, I mean, I would argue
And there was one other one that's coming here.
Nebraska? No.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, I mean, I think Iowa and Nebraska are probably your outliers. Those
Yeah.
4 road games, though, I know what you're going to say. They went to Iowa. We all know what happened to Kinnick back in the
Booby
Urban
traps,
era.
though. It's a good.
they're booby traps.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that's almost helpful. I think the one thing that this team missed this year is that they didn't really get challenged in the way that
They're going to
No,
get
they did
challenged
not.
next year.
I mean, think about the 2024 season. I remember them out at Oregon. It felt like, I mean, they only lost because of a pass interference on Jeremiah Smith. They would have had a field goal to win, although we don't know how that would have gone. But with that said, that challenged that team, that brought that team together. So a road trip to Oregon, a road trip to USC, a road trip to Texas and
Yeah.
Indiana, I think Ryan Day is going to relish in that. He's going to be excited for that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
But I mean,
You'd
Adam's
rather
right,
play him
though.
at home,
Well,
trust
that's
me.
true.
Well, no, but Adam is 100% right, because you heard it all season long about the cupcakes. They didn't play anybody, and then when they finally played someone who was actually good, look what happened. I mean, that was the argument. I like the toughness of the schedule. They need it. It's spread out nicely. It's not like you've got all 3 right at the front. You end with USC. You start with Texas. Then what? Who else did we say?
I don't think we have a schedule yet.
I thought we did.
I don't think the Big Ten. What do you got inside information?
No.
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought we did.
I mean,
Maybe
I know you end
we
with
don't have
Michigan and start with
no,
Texas.
No, you're right. That's true. We don't have an exact schedule. I guess I read it wrong with what's where. But all I'm saying is I'm here for the challenges.
With that said, preseason, where is Ohio State ranked?
Top 3.
Yeah, not number 1. Not.
No, they won't be one.
No.
I think
I could say 3
I think
or
we could
4.
see them 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I think
Top
they
5
could be
for
3
sure.
or 4. And
Boy,
But good.
it's January. Talking about August.
Well, you know
Get
why?
through winter workouts and spring ball.
Well, that's the next thing. We're going to see how this team. This is when they meld. We'll see.
Yeah.
For you folks wondering how all these guys coming from Florida and Georgia and Alabama, how they're. Now it is Coach Mickey Marotti's team, and they got the best guy in the world to bring this team together. They're going to put them through the
Name
winter
tags.
conditioning and.
Going to need some
Name
tags.
tags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what. You might want to buy a program at the spring game this year because it's going to be something. Adam King, Nicole Shearin, Dom Tiberi. Keep it on 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, and 97.1 The Fan for all the best Buckeye coverage there is.